Jessica Pegula is the third best tennis player on the planet. On Monday, August 3rd, she was playing in her own country, in the American capital, at a tournament she had already won twice. Home soil. Home crowd. Home everything. And when she picked up the microphone after losing that final, she said 7 words that the tennis world has not stopped repeating since. It is not fun to play against. Now. Everybody heard that as a compliment. A gracious runner-up, being classy about the girl who just beat her. That is how it got reported. That is how it got clipped and posted. It was not a compliment, it was a confession. And I do not think Jessica Pegula fully realized what she had just admitted out loud. On live television, in front of a stadium full of people waving flags that were not American. Here is what I mean. In tennis, the home crowd is supposed to be the last thing you can count on. Your ranking can slip. Your forehand can desert you. Your body can quit on you in the 3rd set. But when you play in your own country, at a tournament you have won before, the building is yours. That is the one variable that does not move. On Monday in Washington, that variable moved. And it did not move a little, it flipped completely. The world number 3 American stood on an American court and got out-cheered, out-chanted and outnumbered by supporters of a 21-year-old from Quezon City who had never won a tour-level title in her life. So over the next 20 minutes I want to show you 3 things. First, what actually happened inside that stadium, because almost nobody reported it properly. Second, why a tennis arena in Toronto just sold out a Wednesday night session for a player ranked outside the top 19 in the world. And third, the exact words Pegula chose, because she did not say what everybody thinks she said. And the difference between the two is the whole story. Because what Jessica Pegula walked into in Washington was not a crowd. It was a country. And by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why the biggest names on the WTA Tour are quietly starting to worry about it. Before we get inside that stadium, you need about 2 minutes of context. Skip this part and the rest of the video just sounds like noise. Alex Eala is 21 years old, born in Quezon City, left-handed. And at 13, she left home. Not for a school across town. She got on a plane and moved to Mallorca, halfway around the world, to train at Rafael Nadal's academy. 13. Think about who you were at 13, and then imagine packing a bag and moving to Spain to chase something that might never happen. At 17 she won the girls' title at the US Open. First Filipino junior to ever win a Grand Slam title. And then came the long, unglamorous middle part that nobody makes highlight reels about. The challengers. The qualifying draws. The first round exits. Losing to Alicia Parks at the Australian Open in January after winning the opening set without dropping a single game. That one still stings, and we will come back to it. Then Washington happened. Here is her week, and I want you to sit with each one of these names. Round 1, she rallies past Zheng Qinwen, the reigning Olympic gold medalist. Next, she takes down Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion, after being down 5-1 in the 2nd set. Down 5-1. Most 21-year-olds are already thinking about the flight home at 5-1. She won that set anyway. Quarterfinals, she sweeps Elina Svitolina. Semifinals, she runs into Naomi Osaka, 4-time Grand Slam champion, former world number 1, and beats her 6-4, 6-2. Not a slugfest. A dismissal. By the time she reached the final, she had beaten the top 3 seeds of the tournament. And then came Pegula, and then came the rain. Sunday, the sky opened up. Pegula had taken the first set. Play stopped. They sent everybody home and told them to come back Monday. And that overnight delay is the part that fascinates me, because a rain suspension when you are a set down is a psychological grenade. You go back to the hotel with the loss half written. You lie there for 12 hours with it. Monday morning, Eala came back out and won 10 of the next 13 games. The last 9 in a row. 9 straight. In the deciding set she lost a grand total of 8 points. 8. The scoreline read 4-6, 6-4, 6-love, and the last number is the one that tells you everything, because 6-love against the world, number 3 does not happen by accident, and it does not happen by luck. Now, here is the piece of tennis nobody explains properly, and you need it to understand the rest. Tennis is the only major sport where the athlete has to referee her own emotions in total isolation. No teammates, no coach screaming from the sideline. Between every single point there is roughly 25 seconds of nothing. 25 seconds where you walk to the towel and you are alone with whatever just happened. Miss a backhand on break point, And you have 25 seconds to decide whether you are the kind of player who lets that ruin the next 20 minutes. That silence is where matches are actually won and lost. And a crowd does not just make noise during the point. A crowd fills the silence between them. Whoever owns the silence owns the rhythm of the match. Remember that. It is the whole mechanism. And look, if you have made it this far, you clearly care about this story more than the average person scrolling past a highlight clip. So let me just say this. What Eala pulled off in Washington is going to get flattened into a 30-second reel by about 400 accounts this week. And every one of them is going to miss the actual point. If you want the version with the context and the numbers and the parts that did not make the headlines, subscribing takes 2 seconds, and it means the next one finds you automatically. So that is the mechanism. Now here is what actually happened inside that stadium. The first thing nobody said out loud, at least not directly, is this. On Monday, August 3rd, in Washington, D.C., the world number 3 American was the away player. In her own country. And I do not mean that as a figure of speech. I mean the tournament director stood up at the trophy ceremony and effectively confirmed it into a microphone. Mark Ein runs that event. And at the presentation he mentioned that in the weeks before the tournament, virtually every single ticket request coming in was about one player. Not the top seed. Not the 2-time champion. Not the American. Alex Eala. Sit with that for a second. This is a WTA 500 inches the capital of the United States. The demand was for the Filipina ranked 28th in the world. Second thing. The flags. If you watched any footage from that week, Philippine flags were everywhere. They were up on Sunday during the rain delay, and here is the detail that gets me, they were still there on Monday. When the match resumed, the lower bowl was full again. And the chanting for Eala routinely drowned out the support for the American playing at home. That is not a fan writing that. That is what the reporting from the ground said. The noise for the visitor was louder than the noise for the host. When was the last time an American top 3 seed got outsung on American soil? Take a second, actually think about it. I will wait. Third thing, and this is the one that breaks my brain a little. This was a Monday final. Not a Saturday night. Not a Sunday afternoon with the whole city free. Monday. Rescheduled at the last minute because of weather. Normally that means a half-empty stadium and a lot of unsold seats. Instead, people took the day off work. Pegula joked about it herself afterwards, saying she would not tell anyone where they had actually been. Ein described it as possibly the greatest crowd anyone in tennis had ever seen for a Monday final. Not a good crowd for a Monday. The greatest one, period. So already the pattern is strange. But you could still argue it away. Washington, D.C. has a large Filipino community. Maybe it was a one-off. Maybe the stars aligned. Okay. Then explain Toronto. Because 2 days after that final, Eala flew north to the Canadian Open, and the Wednesday night session at SoBi Stadium sold out. Completely. Here is the part that should make you sit up. According to Tennis 365, in the last 20 years, the only other player believed to have produced a sold-out Wednesday night session in Toronto is Serena Williams. Serena Williams. And I want to be very precise about what that means, because it is easy to hear a stat like that and let it slide past you. Serena was the most famous athlete in her sport on the planet. She sold out sessions because she was Serena. Alex Eala is 21, she has exactly 1 tour title to her name, and until about 72 hours ago, she had never been ranked inside the world top 20. A player ranked 20th. Selling out a night session. In a country that is not hers. When did that last happen? And it gets better. Leylah Fernandez was scheduled in that same Wednesday session. Fernandez is Canadian. She is a US Open finalist. She is a genuine local star playing in front of her own people. And tournament organizers still credited the sales surge to Eala. The player Fernandez had just lost to in Washington, so no. Washington was not the exception. Washington was the pattern. This crowd does not belong to a building. It does not belong to a city. It moves. It gets on planes. It crosses borders. It showed up in DC on a Monday and it showed up in Toronto on a Wednesday and it is going to show up wherever she goes next. But here is the thing, and this is where the video turns. The crowd is not the revelation. The crowd is the symptom. And once you see what it is a symptom of, you are going to understand exactly why Pegula's face looked the way it did when she was standing there holding that runner-up plate. Okay, Here is the part that reframes everything, and I want you to actually pay attention to this one because it is bigger than a tennis match. Tennis did not just find a new player this week. Tennis found a new country. And there is a very specific reason that sentence should make every executive on the WTA tour sit straight up in their chair. The Philippines has more than 110 million people. It is, by any honest measure, one of the most obsessively passionate sporting cultures anywhere on earth. When Filipinos love a sport, they do not casually follow it. They organize their lives around it. Businesses close. Streets empty. Everybody watches the same thing at the same time. But for decades, almost all of that energy flowed into one place. Basketball. Not tennis. Tennis was something happening somewhere else, to somebody else, in countries with grass courts and old money. So here is the assumption I want to break, because I think you have been carrying it since the start of this video without noticing. You have been thinking that Alex Eala has a huge fanbase supporting her. That there was this enormous existing Filipino tennis audience just waiting for someone to cheer for, and she showed up and inherited it. That is not what is happening. That is backwards. There was no Filipino tennis audience. She is building one. Right now. In real time. In front of us. Every single one of those people waving a flag in a Washington stadium on a Monday morning is a person who, 3 or 4 years ago, probably could not have named a single WTA tournament. She is not riding a wave. She is the wave. And I want to prove that with one specific thing that happened after the final, because to me this is the single loudest signal in the entire story. Manny Pacquiao posted about her. And not a polite 2-word congratulations. He wrote that she went down in the first round and got back up, and then he said this. Yan ang puso ng Pilipino. That is the heart of the Filipino. Now, if you are American and Pacquiao is just a boxing name to you, let me translate what that post actually is. This is the man who, single-handedly, made an entire nation of 100+ million people care about boxing. He did not join a boxing culture. He created one. When he fought, the crime rate in Manila reportedly dropped to nothing because everybody was inside watching. That man just publicly handed the torch to a 21-year-old tennis player. That is not a congratulations. That is a succession. So let me give you the analogy that finally made this click for me. A home crowd is real estate. It is tied to a location. You get it once a year, in one city, and the second you leave that city it is gone. Most players spend a whole career with exactly one tournament where the building loves them. Alex Eala does not have a home crowd. She has a passport. She does not have a home tournament. She has a home tour. And that is what makes this a genuinely new problem for everybody else in the locker room. If you draw a French woman in Paris, you know what you are getting and you prepare for it. 1 week a year. But if you draw Eala, it does not matter where you are. Washington. Toronto. New York. Melbourne. The stadium is going to sound like Manila. Which brings us back to Pegula. She was not annoyed by the noise. Professionals deal with noise. What Pegula was describing, without quite having the words for it in the moment, was the feeling of standing on a court and realizing the map of your own sport had just been redrawn underneath your feet. And I am curious what you think about that, because this is the part I have gone back and forth on. Is a traveling crowd like this the best thing that has happened to women's tennis in a decade? Or is it something the tour is going to have to figure out how to manage? Tell me in the comments. Genuinely. I read them, and this is the argument I most want to hear the other side of. Now, that is a big claim I just made. So, let me prove it 3 different ways. And the third one comes straight out of Pegula's own mouth. Proof number 1. And this is the one that kills the she got lucky argument dead. 7 wins over top 10 players. This year alone. Not her career. This season. Iga Swiatek. Elena Rybakina, Coco Gauff. Jasmine Paolini. Alina Svitolina, twice. Zheng Qinwen. Naomi Osaka, Jessica Pegula. Her career record against top 10 opponents now sits at 9 wins and 4 losses. 9-4. And she walked out of Washington on a 5-match winning streak against top 10 players. A crowd cannot hit a backhand for you. A crowd cannot hold serve at 4-all in the third. 10,000 people screaming your name does not put a single first serve in the box. Everything I just listed, she did with a racket. Proof number 2. Listen to who is talking about her now. Andy Roddick broke it down after Washington, and his read was sharp. He pointed out that her game makes opponents uncomfortable. It makes them nervous. It pushes them into errors they would not normally make. And then he made the point that actually matters. He said she has moved past being the player who occasionally produces one shock result. The question about Alex Eala is no longer whether she can put together a great tournament. It is whether she can do it week after week, because that consistency is exactly what separates the top 10 from everybody else. Then there is Rafael Nadal. He posted his congratulations within hours, calling it a well-deserved title after all the hard work, and he made a point of congratulating the Philippines and the whole academy team. This is a man who has watched her since she was 13 years old, hitting balls at his academy in Mallorca, thousands of miles from home. He has hit with her. He has tracked every step. When Nadal says the work paid off, he is the one person on earth who actually saw the work. Martina Navratilova weighed in too. Proud. That was the word she used. And her own coach, Joan Bosch, said something afterwards that I keep thinking about. He said this was the goal of the year. Not a nice surprise. Not a bonus. The goal. They planned this. Proof number 3. The systems have already recalculated. She went from world number 28 to a career high number 20. In the race to the WTA finals, the standings that actually decide who plays for the biggest prize of the season, she jumped from 25th to 14th. Her points total went from around 1,600 to over 2,100 in a single week. The prize check was $252,000. And the line that will be in the record books forever. First player from the Philippines, man or woman, to win a WTA Tour singles title. Now let me hit you with the counter test, because I think this is the fastest way to feel how strange this situation is. Name me another player ranked around 20th in the world who could sell out a night session in a foreign country. Take your time. Go through the rankings in your head. You cannot. Because there is not one. And now the detail I have been saving, because almost nobody caught it, and it is the actual answer to the question we started with. Go back to what Pegula said. Everybody quoted the 7 words about it not being fun to play against. But read the full sentence. She did not say the fans here. She did not say the crowd tonight. She said the amazing fans that follow you every single place you go. Every single place you go. That is the admission. Not that the crowd in Washington was loud. That the crowd is not a Washington thing. She was standing on a court in her own country, telling the world that this player carries her stadium with her, and she said it out loud, and it got clipped and posted and nobody read the second half of the sentence. Home advantage is real estate. It is fixed. It sits in one place and it waits for you to come back. Alex Eala's advantage is portable. So let us go all the way back to where we started. What did Jessica Pegula actually admit on that microphone? Here is the answer. She admitted that women's tennis now has a player whose home court travels with her. And nobody on tour has figured out how to prepare for that. There is no scouting report for it. There is no drill for it. You cannot practice the feeling of serving at deuce in the third set while 10,000 people who did not come to see you make it clear whose side the building is on. But I want to be honest about what comes next. Because this story does not just get easier from here. Everything changes for Eala now. She is not the underdog anymore. She is not the fun story in the draw. She is a seed. She is a name people circle. The pressure that was on Pegula in that final is going to be on her in the next one, and the crowd that lifted her is going to become an expectation she has to carry. That is the standard Roddick set. Not one incredible week. Week after week. The immediate test is Toronto, and there is a beautiful symmetry to it. Her opponent in the round of 64 is Alicia Parks. The same Alicia Parks who beat her in the first round of the Australian Open back in January, in a match where Eala won the opening set without losing a game and then lost anyway. 7 months ago, that was a young player who could not close. She is a different human being now. And then, at the end of the month, New York. For the WTA, none of this is small. A market of more than 110 million people just opened up, and markets like that reshape everything. Scheduling. Broadcast deals. Who gets center court and who gets shipped out to court 7 at 11 in the morning. The tour has spent years talking about global growth. This week it got handed a country. But the thing that stays with me is not any of that. It is something Eala said herself at the trophy ceremony. She thanked the Filipino community, in DC and back home and everywhere else. And then she made a point of saying that those fans are helping tennis grow around the world, and that as a female athlete she loves seeing that. 21 years old, 10 minutes after the biggest win of her life, and she is already thinking about what it means for the sport. Not for her. For the sport. She knows exactly who she is and exactly what she is doing. And honestly, that might be the most frightening detail in this entire story. So here is the question I cannot stop turning over. If this is what she does at 21, in her first tour title, at a 500-level event in Washington, what happens when she walks into Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York? A stadium that dwarfs the one in DC. In a city with one of the largest Filipino communities in America, on the biggest stage this sport has. I do not know the answer yet. But we are going to find out in 3 weeks, and I am going to be covering every round of it, Toronto and then New York, match by match. If you want to be there for it instead of hearing about it afterwards, subscribe, and the answer will show up in your feed the day it happens. Washington was the preview. I do not think New York is ready for the main event.